Princess Lyra sat by the tall window of her palace room, staring at the pale blue sky of Zyphora. Her long silver hair reflected the sunlight, and her eyes, a soft violet, were filled with worry. The palace was calm now, but rumors had reached every corner of the kingdom. A human warrior was coming. The thought made her shiver. Humans were known in the galaxy for their strength, courage, and strange unpredictability. Stories told that they could survive battles no other species could. They could outsmart entire armies, repair impossible machines, and face dangers without fear. To Lyra, they sounded more like monsters than people. "Not him, Dad," she cried as she ran down the palace hallway. Her small feet echoed on the polished floors. "I'm afraid of that human warrior. Please, don't let him come here." King Theros, her father, sat in his grand chair in the council room reviewing the reports from his scouts. He was tall and strong, with dark blue skin and bright amber eyes. He looked calm, but he frowned slightly at Lyra's panic. "Lyra," he said in his deep voice, "I understand your fear. Humans are different. But we must not judge him before we see him. He comes with a message of peace." "He is not here to fight us." Lyra shook her head violently. "Peace? How can it be peace if he is a human? I've heard what they do, Dad. They fight like storms and no one can stop them. I don't want to see him. Please." Her father sighed and moved closer. "I know you are scared, but running from fear will not help you. Humans are strong, yes, but they are also clever. And sometimes strength and cleverness are used to help, not harm. You must try to trust me." Lyra's eyes filled with tears. She wanted to believe her father, but the stories of human warriors were too frightening. On other planets, she had seen humans survive attacks that would have destroyed entire cities. One human had reportedly fought a giant machine alone and survived. Another had outsmarted a fleet of alien raiders. These were not stories a young princess forgot easily. As she cried, her father's advisor, Elder Vorin, entered the room. "Your Majesty," he said, bowing slightly, "the human warrior will arrive today. Scouts report his ship approaching Zyphora. He will land at the outer plains near the palace." Lyra's heart skipped a beat. She ran to the balcony, gripping the railing tightly. In the distance, a bright light appeared in the sky. Slowly, it grew larger, until it became clear that it was a spaceship. It was unlike any Zyphoran ship, sleek, silver, and moving with smooth, impossible speed. "It is him," Lyra whispered, her voice trembling. She pressed her forehead against the cold metal of the railing, hoping the ship would change its course. But it did not. It continued to descend, landing in the outer plains with a soft hum. Dust rose around it, sparkling in the afternoon sun. King Theros stepped beside her, his hand resting gently on her shoulder. "Lyra, this is a chance to see a human for yourself. Do not let fear cloud your judgment. Remember, fear is often worse than reality." Lyra took a deep breath but did not speak. She felt a mix of fear and curiosity. She wanted to hide, but at the same time she could not stop staring. The human warrior was about to step onto her planet, and there was no turning back. Minutes passed. Then the ship's door slowly opened. A figure emerged. He was tall and muscular, with skin that was pale compared to Zyphoran's. His hair was dark and short, and his eyes were sharp, intelligent, and calm. He wore simple armor, silver with black accents, but it seemed almost alive, moving with his body. A sword hung at his side, and his posture was perfect, ready but relaxed. Lyra's breath caught. He looked ordinary at first, but there was something different. A human presence. It was not loud or showy, but she felt it deeply. Strength, confidence, and quiet authority all in one. King Theros watched the human carefully. "Commander Jackson," he said aloud, stepping forward as the human approached. "I am King Theros of Zyphora. Welcome to our planet." The human bowed slightly. "Your Majesty," he said in a clear voice, calm and respectful, "I come in peace. I only seek to deliver a message and offer friendship between our peoples." Lyra bit her lip, still hiding behind the balcony pillars. She could hear his voice. It was not frightening, but it was strong, commanding. Somehow, even from a distance, it made her feel small and unsure. Her father turned to her. "Lyra, come forward." "There is no danger." Lyra shook her head. I can't. "I am afraid." King Theros smiled gently. "Then watch first. Observe him. Humans are not like the stories you hear. They are more than legends. They are real, and they are remarkable." Lyra hesitated. Finally, curiosity overcame her fear. She stepped closer to the balcony. Jackson's eyes scanned the surroundings. He seemed to notice everything. Every detail of the palace grounds, every movement in the trees, every shadow in the courtyard. His focus was intense, but he did not seem threatening. Then, unexpectedly, one of the palace guards tripped and fell near the human. Without hesitation, Jackson moved forward. He caught the guard in a smooth motion, steadying him. Lyra gasped. Even this simple act looked effortless and precise. There was no unnecessary force, no arrogance, just skill and care. King Theros nodded. See, Lyra? Even in small acts, his strength is controlled and disciplined. Humans are not reckless fighters. They think before they act. That is why they survive when others do not. Lyra swallowed hard. She wanted to look away, but she could not. The human warrior moved among the guards, speaking briefly, listening, and giving instructions in a calm voice. The guards looked at him with respect, not fear. That puzzled her. How could a stranger from another world earn such trust so quickly? Elder Vorin whispered to the king, "He is remarkable indeed. Not just for his strength, but for the way he commands attention without demanding it." Lyra felt a strange mix of fear and fascination. She had never seen anyone like this human. His presence was powerful, but not threatening. She wanted to run, yet a part of her wanted to know more. Suddenly, a loud roar echoed from the nearby forest. A wild creature, massive and with sharp claws, charged toward the palace. The guards shouted and raised their weapons, but the creature was fast. Without hesitation, Jackson stepped forward. He moved quickly but carefully, using his sword and skill to redirect the creature away from the palace and into a trap he created with quick thinking. In moments, the threat was gone. The guards were astonished. Lyra's eyes widened. He did that alone?" she whispered. Her voice trembled with awe. King Theros placed a hand on her shoulder. "Yes, Lyra. Humans are clever, fast, and brave. That is why we must learn to understand them, not fear them blindly." Lyra nodded slowly, but her heart was still racing. She felt a strange mixture of relief, fear, and curiosity. The human warrior had not harmed anyone, yet he had shown power and skill beyond anything she had imagined. As the sun began to set, Jackson stood at the edge of the palace grounds. He looked up at the palace, his expression unreadable but calm. Lyra stayed on the balcony, watching him silently. She did not understand humans yet, but she could feel that this warrior, was unlike anyone she had ever met. That night, Lyra could not sleep. She kept thinking of the human, wondering what he would do next and why she felt both afraid and drawn to him at the same time. She realized that this was only the beginning. The arrival of the human warrior had changed everything on Zyphora, and her life would never be the same again. Outside her window, the stars twinkled. Among them, Lyra thought, there was a human who had come from far away, carrying courage, skill, and a presence that could not be ignored. She did not know it yet, but soon she would have to face him directly and confront her fear in ways she could never imagine. And so, the human warrior stood on Zyphora, calm and ready, unaware that a young princess was both terrified and fascinated by him. The galaxy had introduced two worlds to each other, and their story was only beginning. The next morning, Princess Lyra woke to the gentle hum of the palace. The sun was just rising over the violet forests of Zyphora, casting long shadows across the palace walls. Yet despite the soft light and calm morning, her mind was restless. She could not stop thinking about the human warrior, Commander Jackson. Lyra knew that today she would have to see him more closely. The palace council had decided that the human would be shown the inner grounds and the royal library. But the thought of facing him still made her heart race. "I don't want to meet him," she whispered to herself, pacing her room. "He is too strong, too clever, too human." Her hand rested on the balcony railing as she looked down at the palace gardens. Birds with shimmering feathers flew across the sky, and small creatures scurried in the flower beds. Life continued as usual, but Lyra's fear shadowed the beauty of the morning. Meanwhile, Commander Jackson had begun exploring the palace grounds with a quiet curiosity. Unlike the palace guards, he did not move stiffly or show fear. Every step he took was deliberate, calculated yet unthreatening. He observed the architecture, the plants, and even the palace creatures, noting small details that others might miss. One of the palace scouts, a young Zipharan named Kalar, watched him closely. "Why does he move like that?" Kalar whispered to a guard nearby. "He is not like us, and he is not afraid of anything." The guard shrugged. Humans are strange, but they survive where others fail. Maybe that is why he is here. Lyra decided she could not stay in her room any longer. She wanted to see the human, but at the same time she feared him. She slipped through the corridors quietly, moving toward the gardens. Perhaps from a distance she could watch him and feel safe. As she reached the outer garden, she froze. There, near a grove of glowing trees, a small group of wild creatures had appeared. They were faster and larger than any creatures Lyra had ever seen in the palace grounds. Their eyes glowed red and their claws scraped the ground as they advanced. Lyra's heart raced. She had no weapons and no guards nearby. She had only run into the garden for a glimpse of Jackson. Now the creatures threatened her. Before she could scream, a shadow fell across the clearing. Commander Jackson stepped forward, his hand on the hilt of his sword. His calm, confident presence seemed to fill the air, and even the creatures hesitated. Lyra gasped. He did not rush in recklessly. He moved slowly, observing the creatures, calculating their movements. With a sudden, smooth motion, he used a small device from his belt that emitted a bright pulse of light. The creatures screeched and scattered into the trees, frightened but unharmed. Lyra blinked in shock. He did that," she whispered. She could not understand how one human could stop such dangerous creatures without harming them or himself. Jackson turned slightly, as if sensing someone watching him. His eyes met Lyra's. For a moment, time seemed to stop. She froze, unsure whether to run or remain still. His gaze was sharp but not angry. It was calm, strong, and somehow kind. Lyra swallowed hard and took a small step forward. Who are you?" she asked, her voice trembling. "I am Jackson," he said, bowing slightly. "Commander of the human forces. And you are, I am Princess Lyra," she stammered. Her hands fidgeted with the hem of her dress. I didn't mean to. I was just watching." Jackson's lips curved into a small smile. "It is all right. You did not disturb me. You're safe here." Lyra's fear did not vanish entirely, but a small part of her curiosity took over. You are not afraid of them?" she asked, nodding toward the trees. He shook his head. "Fear can be useful if it teaches caution, but it should not control you. You must learn to act even when you are afraid. That is how humans survive." Lyra blinked. "Humans survive? But they are so strong, so fearless," she thought, and yet he spoke gently, almost like he cared. Before she could respond, a rustling came from the bushes. Another creature, larger and faster than the first, leaped forward. Jackson moved instantly, positioning himself between Lyra and the creature. His movements were precise and controlled, almost effortless. With a swift motion, he threw a small device that released a net. The creature was caught, struggling but unharmed. Jackson stepped forward and carefully freed it, guiding it back toward the forest. Lyra watched, wide-eyed. I've never seen anyone like you," she whispered. Her fear was still there, but it was mixed now with awe. Jackson turned to her again. "There is much in the galaxy that is new and frightening," he said. "But if you face it with care and courage, you can overcome it. Even you, Princess Lyra, have more courage than you realize." Lyra felt her cheeks warm. No one had ever spoken to her like that. She had been treated as delicate, as someone who needed constant protection, and yet he believed she could face danger. That thought was strange and yet exciting. Suddenly, a shout came from the palace gates. A group of palace guards had spotted a scout team from a rival faction approaching. They were small, but their weapons could cause serious damage if they reached the palace. Jackson did not hesitate. He gestured to Lyra to step back. Then, using clever traps and distractions, he slowed the intruders. The palace guards, inspired by his actions, moved forward with confidence. Within minutes, the intruders were neutralized, retreating in confusion. Lyra could hardly believe what she saw. One human had changed the outcome of the conflict before it even fully began. Her fear of him had not disappeared, but her admiration was growing. As the adrenaline of the moment faded, Lyra approached him cautiously. I thought humans were dangerous," she admitted quietly. Jackson shook his head. "Some are. Some are not. Just as in your world, there are many kinds of people in mine. What matters is what you choose to do with your strength and skill. Fear does not define you, courage does." Lyra thought about his words. She had spent her life being protected, shielded from danger. But now she realized that courage was something she could learn. Watching Jackson, she felt the first spark of hope that perhaps humans were not monsters but allies. The day passed with more small demonstrations of Jackson's skill. He repaired broken palace machinery with tools no Zifferin had seen before. He gave advice on security, teaching subtle ways to protect the palace that did not rely on brute force. Lyra followed at a distance, both afraid and fascinated. She noticed how the palace guards began to admire him, and even the royal advisors listened carefully to his words. Jackson's presence was changing the palace, showing that humans were not only strong but wise, and capable of leadership without demanding it. By evening, Lyra found herself standing alone with Jackson in the palace gardens. The sunset painted the sky in shades of gold and purple. She hesitated, then spoke. I don't understand you. I'm afraid of you, and yet I feel safe when you are here. Jackson smiled faintly. That is natural. Fear and trust can exist together. It takes time to understand someone, especially someone from another world. But the fact that you feel safe, even a little, means you are learning, and learning is the first step to courage. Lyra nodded slowly. She still had questions, still had fear, but she could feel the change within herself. The human warrior was not the monster she had imagined. He was something else entirely. Strong, clever, brave, and yet gentle. King Theros, watching from a distance, could see the change in his daughter. He knew this was only the beginning of her journey, and that the human warrior would play an important role in it. That night, Lyra lay in her bed, staring at the ceiling. She could still feel her fear, but now there was a spark of curiosity and respect. She whispered into the darkness, I want to understand him. I want to see why humans are so different. Outside the palace, Commander Jackson stood on the balcony looking at the stars. He was aware that his presence had stirred fear and awe in the young princess, but he did not judge her for it. He had faced fear many times, and he knew that courage often began with uncertainty. And so, on Zephora, the princess and the human warrior had their first true encounter. Fear had met bravery, and admiration had begun to grow. Both knew that their paths would cross again, and that the galaxy held challenges that would test both their courage in ways neither could yet imagine. The palace of Zephora was quiet, but that calm was deceptive. Beyond the glittering walls and gardens, shadows moved silently through the forests. A secret faction, jealous of the princess and her father's rule, had planned to strike. Their target, Princess Lyra. They believed that capturing her would give them control over the entire kingdom. Inside the palace, Lyra moved cautiously. Her first encounter with Commander Jackson had left a mark on her. She was still nervous around humans, but now curiosity and admiration mixed with her fear. She watched him quietly as he interacted with the palace staff, fixing devices, giving advice, and teaching small lessons about strategy. Elder Vorin approached Lyra. Your Highness, you should stay inside today, he said, bowing slightly. Reports indicate that a hostile group may be approaching our borders. The king insists you remain safe. Lyra hesitated. She wanted to obey, yet part of her wished to see Jackson again. I want to learn from him, she admitted softly. I feel like I could understand more if I watch him. Vorin shook his head. It is dangerous, princess. Even you cannot face the unknown alone. Lyra took a deep breath. I will be careful. I just want to see him. Meanwhile, in the outer plains, Jackson studied the landscape with a sharp eye. He had been observing Zephora, its defenses, and its people. Despite appearances, he knew the kingdom could be vulnerable if someone clever attacked. His instincts told him trouble was near. Suddenly, a faint movement in the forest caught his attention. Using his experience, he spotted a small group of scouts approaching the palace, moving quietly but with deadly intent. These were no ordinary raiders. They were trained, organized, and armed with alien technology designed to bypass normal palace defenses. Jackson's mind worked quickly. He signaled silently to the palace guards, who immediately moved to defensive positions. He did not reveal his full plan to them yet, knowing that keeping the attackers guessing would give them the upper hand. In the palace, Lyra wandered closer to the balcony, peering at the outer plains. Her heart raced when she saw the movement. Before she could react, Jackson appeared beside her, silently observing. They are scouts, he said calmly. A larger attack may follow. You should return inside. Lyra's fear spiked. Scouts, what does that mean? Are they going to attack us? Jackson shook his head slightly. Not yet. But we must prepare. Fear is natural, but panic is dangerous. Watch me and learn. You may help more than you think. Lyra hesitated. Could she help? She was just a young princess used to being protected, not fighting. Yet something in Jackson's calm presence made her believe she could try. As the scouts drew closer, Jackson moved swiftly and quietly. He used small tools and devices to create diversions, setting traps that did not harm life but slowed the intruders. Rocks rolled, trees shifted, and lights flashed, confusing the scouts and buying time for the palace guards to organize. Lyra watched in awe. Each move Jackson made was deliberate, careful, and clever. He did not attack recklessly.
He did not show fear.
Yet he remained calm, guiding the palace guards with gestures and quick instructions. You are amazing, Lyra whispered. She stepped closer, forgetting her fear for a moment. Jackson glanced at her, giving a small nod. You can do more than just watch. Courage is not the absence of fear, princess. It is action despite it. If you follow instructions carefully, you can help. Lyra's heart pounded. Me, how? I don't know how to. Jackson placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. Trust yourself. Watch the patterns. The scouts move in groups of 3. If you alert the guards at the right moment, they will have the advantage. That is all you need to do. Lyra nodded, swallowing hard. She could feel her fear, but she focused on observing. When the scouts advanced too close to a palace wall, she shouted a warning, and the guards reacted immediately, surrounding the intruders. The scouts panicked, trying to retreat, but Jackson had already anticipated their moves, redirecting them toward another trap he had prepared. Within moments, the scouts were captured. None were harmed seriously, but they were completely disarmed. Lyra's hands trembled from excitement and fear. She had done exactly what Jackson instructed, and it had worked. You did well, Jackson said calmly. You faced fear and you acted. That is courage. Lyra's cheeks warmed. She had never thought of herself as brave. She had been a princess who hid behind walls, always protected. Yet now she had contributed to defending her home. A small spark of pride grew within her. King Theros arrived on the balcony, observing the scene. Lyra, you did well, he said, his voice proud. Perhaps I underestimated you. You are stronger than you believe. Lyra looked at Jackson, whose calm expression did not change. I still don't understand humans, she admitted softly. You are so strong, so clever. And yet, you do not seem proud or arrogant. Why? Jackson smiled faintly. Strength is useful, yes. Cleverness is useful, yes. But they are tools, not reasons to act. What matters is how you use them and why. Humans learn that true power is in protecting, not harming. That is why I act as I do. That is why I survive, and why I help others. Lyra listened carefully, feeling her fear melt slowly into understanding. She realized that humans were not monsters as the stories described. They were different, yes, but their difference was admirable. That night, as the palace lights glowed and the stars twinkled above Zephora, Lyra could not sleep. She thought about the day, about the scouts, and about Jackson. She had faced danger even in a small way and survived. More importantly, she had learned something important. Humans were unpredictable, yes, but their unpredictability could be used for good. She whispered to herself, I think I am beginning to understand him. Maybe humans are not just dangerous. Maybe they are heroes. Outside, Commander Jackson walked the palace grounds quietly, ensuring all defenses were secure. He knew the hidden threat had not ended. There would be more challenges ahead, and the kingdom's safety depended on careful planning and courage from everyone. Even the princess. Jackson paused at the edge of the forest, looking up at the palace. He knew Lyra had been watching him. She was learning slowly about fear, courage, and trust. That was as important as any battle. Humans often faced danger, but they also knew that teaching others to face it made them stronger, and sometimes that was more heroic than fighting alone. Lyra, lying in her bed, stared at the ceiling, her mind alive with new thoughts. She realized she had learned something vital. Fear could be faced, courage could grow, and humans were strange, powerful, and inspiring. She did not know what tomorrow would bring. She did not know what further threats might come from the shadows. But one thing was clear. The human warrior had changed her view of the galaxy forever, and she felt for the first time that she could face the unknown without running. Outside the palace, the night was quiet again, but the stars seemed brighter. Among them, Lyra thought, there was a human who had come from far away, not just to observe, but to teach her something she would never forget. The hidden threat was still out there, moving through the forest, waiting for the right moment. But Lyra no longer felt powerless. With Jackson nearby, she felt a spark of hope and strength she had never known. And so, the young princess of Zephora learned a lesson that would shape her for the future. Fear could be faced, courage could be found, and humans, even terrifying ones, could become the greatest allies a kingdom could ever have. The galaxy was vast, and the dangers were many. But for the first time, Lyra felt ready to face them step by step, with the guidance of the human warrior she had once feared, but now could not ignore. The night had grown darker than usual on Zephora. A heavy wind swept across the palace grounds, rustling the glowing leaves of the trees. The stars shone faintly above, struggling to pierce the clouds that gathered ominously. Something felt wrong. Commander Jackson had sensed it for hours. The hidden threat that had sent scouts earlier was returning, and this time it was not alone. Princess Lyra could not sleep. She had learned so much from Jackson already, about courage, observation, and careful action. But her heart still raced at the thought of danger. She had been instructed to remain in her chambers, but curiosity pulled her to the balcony. She looked out over the palace grounds, straining her violet eyes through the darkness. Then she saw them, shapes moving swiftly in the outer plains, larger and more organized than the scouts from before. This was no simple raid. The attackers carried advanced weapons, designed to pierce through defenses, and they moved with precision that showed military training. Lyra gasped and stumbled backward when she saw one of the palace guards appear from the shadows, alarmed. "Your Highness, the attackers are approaching fast. They are stronger than the scouts we saw earlier." Before Lyra could respond, Jackson appeared silently beside her. His expression was calm, but his eyes were sharp, observing every movement outside. "This is the main force," he said quietly. "We must act immediately. I need you to stay here until I signal otherwise." Lyra hesitated, fear and excitement tangled in her chest. But I want to help. I can watch and warn." Jackson looked at her steadily. "Then watch carefully and act exactly when I tell you. This is not about strength alone. It is about timing, courage, and intelligence. You can do this." Lyra nodded, swallowing hard. She could feel her fear, but she trusted him. Slowly, she followed his instructions. Outside the palace, the attackers approached the walls. Jackson moved swiftly, directing the guards and setting traps that no Zephyran had thought of before. He used the terrain, small devices, and clever distractions to slow the enemy's advance. He did not rush blindly. Every action was precise, every movement calculated. Lyra watched from the balcony, her heart pounding. When one of the attackers neared a weak section of the wall, Jackson signaled to her. She shouted a warning to the nearby guards, who quickly moved to intercept the intruder. The attackers faltered, surprised by the coordinated defense. "You can do this," Jackson said quietly to her. "Observe, think, and act. You are braver than you know." Lyra's hands trembled, but she obeyed. She noticed patterns in the attackers' movements, just as Jackson had taught her. She shouted warnings at the right moments, directed guards to blocked paths, and even suggested small diversions. Each action worked perfectly, slowing the attackers and confusing them. The battle grew louder. Energy weapons flashed in the darkness, and the clash of alien armor rang across the plains. Yet Jackson remained calm, moving through the chaos with unmatched skill. He disarmed attackers with precision, redirected their forces, and protected the palace at every turn. Lyra watched him fight, her fear slowly transforming into awe. This human, this warrior she had once dreaded, was extraordinary, but he did not fight recklessly. Every move saved lives, every tactic minimized harm. Suddenly, a group of attackers broke through a side gate and rushed toward the royal chambers. Lyra froze. Her father's safety was at stake. Without thinking, she shouted a warning, and the nearby guards moved just in time to block the intruders. Jackson appeared seconds later, neutralizing the attackers with clever traps and skillful maneuvers. "You see," he said quietly, after the immediate threat was gone, "courage is not about fighting alone. It is about using your mind, working with others, and acting when it matters most." Lyra's chest heaved. She had never felt so alive, so aware of herself. The fear that had gripped her for so long was now tempered with understanding. Humans were not simply strong, they were resourceful, smart, and careful. And courage. Courage came from facing fear, not denying it. King Theros arrived at the balcony observing the scene. His armor was slightly scuffed from the skirmishes outside, but his pride shone brightly. "Lyra," he said, voice strong but gentle, "you have done well tonight. You faced your fear and acted. That is bravery." Lyra looked at her father, then down at Jackson, who was quietly checking the palace perimeter. I didn't think I could," she admitted. "But he showed me I could." Jackson smiled faintly, though he was already planning the next steps. "Everyone can act with courage, Princess. Strength is important, but it is intelligence, care, and decisiveness that make actions meaningful." The attackers regrouped for a final push. This time they used larger machines, armored vehicles with energy cannons designed to break through the walls. The palace guards hesitated, unsure how to stop them, but Jackson was ready. He signaled quickly, leading small teams of guards in coordinated strikes. Lyra watched as he used the environment to his advantage. He toppled trees to block paths, created diversions with energy pulses, and guided the palace's defensive systems to maximize effect. Even the machines that seemed unstoppable faltered under his tactics. At one point, a large vehicle broke through the outer gate. Lyra felt a wave of panic, but then Jackson appeared, leaping onto the vehicle with incredible agility. Using his strength and skill, he disabled the controls, stopping it without harming the attackers inside. Lyra gasped. He's incredible," she whispered. The human warrior she had feared so much was now her example of courage and skill. By midnight, the attackers were defeated. The palace grounds were safe, though the battle had left marks: scorched earth, broken fences, and scattered debris. But no lives were lost, thanks to Jackson's careful planning and the bravery of the palace guards, guided by his instructions. King Theros approached Jackson, his eyes full of respect. "You have saved my kingdom tonight. I underestimated humans, but I see now your value, your courage, and your wisdom. You have my gratitude." Jackson bowed slightly. "I only did what I could, Your Majesty." The palace defenders acted bravely as well. I guided them, but their courage made the difference. Lyra stepped forward, hesitating for a moment. Then she spoke, her voice steady. "Commander Jackson, I was afraid of you at first. I thought humans were too dangerous, but now I see that you fight not for pride, not for power, but to protect. You showed me what courage really is." Jackson looked at her calmly, his gaze steady but kind. "Fear is natural. Courage is a choice. You made that choice today, Princess. Remember it. It is more powerful than any weapon." Lyra's chest swelled with pride. She had faced fear, contributed to the defense, and survived. She looked at Jackson differently now. Not as a monster, not as something terrifying, but as someone extraordinary. Someone to learn from. Someone who inspired courage. As the first light of dawn broke over Zephora, Lyra realized how much the human had changed her. She had feared him, yet now she admired him. She had been protected all her life, yet now she felt capable of action. And she understood something important. Humans, though strange and powerful, could be friends, guides, and allies in ways she had never imagined. Jackson, standing at the edge of the palace grounds, surveyed the horizon. The attackers were gone, but the galaxy remained dangerous. He knew that tomorrow would bring new challenges, and the princess would have to learn more about courage, strategy, and leadership. Lyra, looking out at the plains, felt a strange mixture of fear and excitement. She had survived her first real encounter with danger, guided by a human warrior she had once dreaded. The memory of the night would stay with her forever, a lesson that courage, intelligence, and careful action could overcome even the greatest threats. The palace had been saved. The kingdom was safe, and a young princess had taken her first steps toward understanding humans and the power they could inspire in others. And so, the story of the human warrior and the alien princess continued, their fates entwined by courage, fear, and mutual respect. The battle had been won, but the lessons would last far longer than the scars left on the palace grounds. The morning after the attack, the palace of Zephora was calm but filled with quiet activity. Palace guards repaired the broken walls, mended fences, and tended to the damaged gardens. The air smelled of fresh earth and smoke from the previous night's battle. Princess Lyra walked carefully through the courtyard, her violet eyes wide with thought. She had survived the night of fear, and yet, Her heart still raced when she remembered the attackers. Commander Jackson moved among the palace guards, checking defenses and ensuring that no hidden threats remained. His calm presence gave everyone confidence. He did not act like a stranger. He acted like a guardian, someone who belonged not by birth but by courage and skill. Lyra hesitated at the edge of the courtyard. She had not seen him up close since the battle ended. She wanted to speak with him but feared disturbing his focus. Gathering her courage, she approached quietly. "Commander Jackson," she called softly. Jackson turned, his piercing eyes meeting hers. For a moment, the world seemed to pause. Lyra felt a mixture of awe and respect, still tinged with the old fear she had carried for so long. "Princess Lyra," he said, his voice calm and steady. "Are you all right?" Lyra nodded. I think I am. Last night, you saved us. You saved me. I don't know how to thank you." Jackson gave a small smile. "There is no need for thanks. Courage, Princess, comes from action and choice, not words. You showed courage yourself last night." Lyra looked down at her hands. "I did?" she asked quietly. Her voice trembled. "You did," Jackson said firmly. "You warned the guards at the right moments, helped protect the palace, and kept your fear under control. That is courage. Do not underestimate yourself." Lyra's chest swelled with pride. She had always felt small and delicate, always protected. But now, standing in front of this human, she realized that she had taken part in something greater than herself. She had survived fear, acted wisely, and helped others. And that knowledge changed her. King Theros approached them, his expression proud. "Lyra," he said gently, "you have learned much from this human warrior. Your fear has turned into courage, and your courage has turned into wisdom. Commander Jackson has shown us all what humans are capable of: bravery, intelligence, and selflessness." Lyra looked at her father, then back at Jackson. I understand now," she whispered. "Humans are not monsters. They are heroes in their own way." Jackson inclined his head. "We all have heroes inside us, Princess. Humans, Zypherans, or anyone else. It is how we use that heroism that matters." As the morning progressed, the palace staff and guards gathered in the courtyard. There was a sense of relief and accomplishment in the air. The attack had been serious, but thanks to Jackson's guidance, everyone had survived without serious harm. And for Lyra, that survival was more than physical. It was emotional. She had faced the fear of humans, faced the fear of danger, and emerged stronger. Lyra found herself walking beside Jackson as he spoke quietly to the palace commanders. She had questions, curiosity burning in her mind. "Commander," she asked softly, "why did you come here? Why risk yourself for us?" Jackson looked at her, his gaze thoughtful. "Because it was the right thing to do," he replied. "Humans are not perfect. We make mistakes. But we also protect, we help. And when we see danger threatening others, we act. That is our choice, and sometimes it changes the world." Lyra listened carefully. His words were simple but powerful. She realized that humans acted not just out of strength, but out of a sense of responsibility and courage. Something inside her shifted. She felt respect, admiration, and a spark of something she could not yet name. Do you think humans can always help?" she asked quietly. Jackson smiled faintly. "Not always. But the right actions taken at the right time can make all the difference. And courage can be found in anyone if they are willing to act despite fear." Lyra nodded slowly, thinking of the scouts, the attackers, and how she had contributed. She had acted despite fear. She had learned courage. She had survived and even helped save others. King Theros stepped closer, resting a hand on her shoulder. "Lyra, you have learned more than just courage. You have learned trust. Trust in yourself and in others. That is more important than any weapon or wall. That is how kingdoms survive." Lyra looked at Jackson again. She had feared him once. She had imagined him as a monster, a force too strong to face. Yet now she realized he was different. Strong, yes, but kind. Brave, yes, but careful. A human, yes, but also a teacher, a guide, and a protector. The sun rose higher in the sky, and the palace grounds were bathed in warm light. Lyra turned to Jackson. "Commander, will you stay?" she asked quietly. "Stay with us. So we can learn more, so we can be ready if danger comes again." Jackson regarded her silently for a moment. Then he nodded. "I will stay, Princess Lyra. Not forever, perhaps, but as long as I am needed. Together we can prepare, learn, and protect your world." Lyra smiled, a mixture of relief and joy shining in her eyes. For the first time, she felt completely safe. not because she was protected by walls or guards, but because she understood courage, and because a human warrior she had once feared now stood beside her. King Theros stepped back, observing his daughter and the human warrior. Pride and gratitude filled his eyes. "Commander Jackson," he said, "you have not only defended my kingdom, but you have inspired my daughter. You have shown her that courage, intelligence, and trust are greater than fear. That is a gift beyond measure." Jackson bowed slightly. "I only guided, Your Majesty." The princess acted bravely herself. That is the true inspiration. Lyra felt warmth spread through her chest. She had acted bravely, she had survived fear, and she had learned to trust. And she realized something profound. Humans were not only strong, they could change hearts and minds, not just through combat, but through courage, wisdom, and care. As the palace activity continued, Lyra wandered to the balcony once more, watching the distant plains. The danger had passed, but the galaxy remained vast and uncertain. Yet she no longer felt powerless. She had learned that courage and trust could make a difference, and that humans, though strange and different, could be allies, guides, and even friends. Jackson appeared beside her silently, looking out over the plains as well. "The galaxy is full of challenges, Princess," he said quietly. "But with courage, intelligence, and trust we can face them. You have learned much, and you will learn more. But remember this, courage is not about being fearless. It is about acting despite fear." Lyra nodded slowly. "I understand," she whispered, "and I will not forget. Thank you, Commander Jackson, for teaching me." Jackson inclined his head. "It is my honor, Princess. You have the heart of a leader, and your courage today proves it. The galaxy will see great things from you." As the sun climbed higher, Lyra returned to the palace halls, her steps confident and light. She felt stronger, braver, and more aware than ever before. She had faced fear, survived danger, and learned trust. And in that she discovered the power of humans, not just as warriors, but as allies, teachers, and friends. And so the story of Princess Lyra and Commander Jackson reached its first peaceful chapter. The palace of Zephora was safe. The kingdom was stronger, and a young princess had learned that courage and trust could overcome fear. Humans, though different and sometimes frightening, could inspire greatness and sometimes even change the hearts of those who once feared them. The stars above Zephora twinkled brightly, as if celebrating the courage of a young princess and the human warrior who had taught her the true meaning of bravery. The galaxy was vast and dangerous, but together, Lyra and Jackson had proven that fear could be faced, courage could be found, and trust could light even the darkest night. And for the first time in her life, Princess Lyra felt ready for whatever challenges the galaxy might bring.